perhaps 80 or 90 pounds, with sinewy arms and strong hands. The wooden hoe rubbed her palms raw as she dug and dragged the instrument through the dirt and mud. She had been working all day, and her stomach ached with hunger. The white overseer, who had sent her to this far field, appeared suddenly. Celia immediately knew what was coming and tried to run, but the man was too fast and too powerful. Mason was in a distant field when he heard his wife's screams. He dropped his hoe and sprinted through the rows of tobacco and corn, their sharp edges cutting like razors. As he ran, he lifted his hands to shield his eyes. The assault on his wife had been brutal. He charged the rapist and began to beat him. Celia begged her husband to stop hitting the overseer, knowing the punishment that awaited any slave who hit a white man. The overseer, too, begged for the blows to cease, promising not to tell the owner what the slave had done. Mason relented and looked at the injured man. His shirt was a tattered mess and stained with blood. His nose stood at a crooked angle, and his eyes were already swollen tight and black. Mason turned and ran as fast as his legs could carry him. "A nigger has struck a white man!" The word went out and had the whole county talking. No one asked what incited the incident. It didn't matter. The law was on the overseer's side. They were in Maryland, which, like other slave states, provided generous means of legal revenge for slave owners and whites in general who had been attacked by a slave. Mason hid in the woods for days. He ventured out at night in search of food, but the overseer's guards kept such strict surveillance that his efforts were thwarted. His supplies dwindled until he was starved out. The day for punishment arrived. Whites from across Charles County made up the majority of the audience, though slaves from the neighboring plantations were forced to witness the scene. The overseer dragged Mason forward and tied him to the whipping post with an iron chain. He tore off the black man's shirt. A well-dressed white man, Mason's owner, stepped forward. Francis Newman had been born around 1759 to a wealthy family from Devon, England, but had fled to America after getting caught in a scandal with a mistress. He had quickly remarried in the New World and had prospered financially. Newman eventually owned over 1,000 acres across several plots, along with the LaGrange estate, a large, well-built red brick house about a mile from Port Tobacco. He purchased the house in November 1798 from Dr. James Craik, George Washington's personal physician, who later became chief surgeon for the Continental Army. By 1798, Newman owned 24 slaves. 7 of them were healthy individuals between the ages of 12 and 50, and therefore taxable. The other 17 were either children or they were elderly, sick, or disabled. He rented still more slaves, but Newman was a cold, hard man who mistreated his enslaved workers, purchased and rented alike. The illiterate white audience was furious that Newman hadn't immediately sold Mason south. Some of them believed Newman himself deserved to be lynched for not administering the justice they so craved. But Newman was a businessman. He knew a slave like Mason was far too valuable to be executed. No one kills a cow for trampling carrots. He would teach all his slaves a lesson this day. Newman nodded to a heavy-set man with a leather bullwhip in hand. The burly blacksmith, Mr. Hughes, took his position a few feet away from his victim. The overseer pulled the rope until Mason's arms were raised taut above his head. The slave shook with fear and braced in preparation. The first lash fell. Mason howled with pain. The leather cord cut deep, its bulbous end leaving a hard bruise, while its lengthy feathered edge left a searing red stripe across Mason's back. Flogging was commonplace on Maryland plantations. Some people earned a good living from punishing errant slaves, and Blacksmith Hughes profited greatly from his well-honed sidecraft. Crack! Snap! The blacksmith's powerful arms worked the barbed whip with a steady cadence. The stripe